Now, the last point I want to make on the definition is that at the moment there are varieties of the Precariat. It is a class divided, which is why it's not a class for itself. You have working class people falling into it, who are easily preyed on by populist politicians who play on their fears and insecurity and blame some group, migrants, Muslims, Jews, whatever it is. That group is a part of the atavistic Precariat. One understands their fears. One should not dismiss their fears as pure prejudice. One should understand them. The second part of the Precariat consists of many migrants who are denizens in our midst. People who have come from somewhere else and therefore keep their heads down even if they're suffering, because they've got to survive. And the third part of the Precariat is the one that I often get asked to address, which is the young, educated people who are suffering from status frustration, who were sold a pup when they were invited to go to university and told that this would lead to a career with great prospects. And they come out with debts and knowing that they only have unstable labor to look forward to. Now, alongside that, we have a process which I think has not received the analysis and attention it deserves. And that is a growing number of us all are denizens, not citizens. A denizen is an old 13th century British concept where it applied to somebody who goes into a town and was given, if he was lucky, and after a lot of paying, no doubt, some sort of patent so he could practice and live there on a provisional basis. But the modern concept of a denizen includes not only the migrants who never get access to the rights of a citizen, but an increasing number of people who are losing rights that they thought they possessed. And they're all 5 forms of rights. You see more and more of us becoming denizens. We're losing civil rights. Different groups are losing them in different ways. But most in particular, the lack of due process in taking away things that people took as entitlements. This lack of civil rights leads to things like double jeopardy. If you're a temporary migrant, you not only get punished for a misdemeanor, but you're likely to be expelled from the country as well. That's double jeopardy, not justice. Not only do people losing civil rights, more and more people lose political rights. I have no political rights, but I'm the least to worry about. Millions and millions of people lose political rights, including those who are incarcerated in this country and a number of other countries, for things that they wouldn't have been incarcerated for 20 years ago. Then we're losing cultural rights. More and more of us are losing cultural rights, not just on religious grounds, but on the grounds of such things. You don't belong to a community that gave your life meaning and social memory to draw on, and a code of ethics and a code of standards, because we can't belong to a community that's sustainable and leads to social mobility. And then more and more people around the world are losing social rights. When you shift from a contributions-based system of social insurance, which was not universal, let's not pretend it was, to means testing and conditionality and behavioral testing and all of that stuff, you automatically start a process of denying more and more people access to social rights. I don't have the time to go into that, but anyone's interested, I chronicle it at length because I think it is profoundly challenging to all of us. And finally, again, it has not received the attention it deserves, more and more people are losing economic rights. And the most fundamental economic right is the right to practice your occupation. The right to be able to do what you are qualified to do. Millions and millions of people are denied that by the profound changes in labor regulations that have taken place. So we have shifted in the world, in this country as much as anywhere else, away from the old system of self-regulation of occupations to licensing by boards and agents of the state with a mandate to only be concerned with competitiveness. Competitiveness, breaking up any practice that may be deemed collective in character. And as a consequence of occupational licensing, more and more people go around the world being unable to do what they're qualified to do. It's not just an international migration thing, but it is very fundamentally to do with that. Now, a few comments, and then I must wind up, on the changing character of migration in the context of the growth of the Precariat. We have a situation where more than 1 billion people cross borders every year. We have a situation where there's been a massive upsurge in migration in the last 20 years. So legally, according to the best figures available, something like 230 million migrants are working around the world. Illegally or undocumented, heaven only knows how many there are. And in this process of this, we've seen a trend away from settlement migration to circulation, labor circulation, where you're not settling any particular place. Many more undocumented. It's much more feminized than it used to be. Many more women who are moving for work and other reasons. Student mobility has multiplied. Migration within multinational corporations has multiplied. And of course, we have the horrifying reality of far more refugees and asylum seekers today than any time in human history. That is a disgrace for the world. And more countries, not just this country, but this country has been a leader in this respect, are putting asylum seekers and refugees in on-hold status for months, for years, using that as a way, actually, of controlling migration, but not saying so. It's a process that is one of depravity. And we've seen migrants become the light infantry of global capitalism. And in the process, I want to highlight two things that have emerged. The first, I think, and if anybody can disprove me, please tell me, we have the emergence of a labor export regime. More countries, particularly in Southeast Asia, led by China, are organizing the mass movement of hundreds of thousands of workers on short-term projects, many who are convicts or prisoners, who are being used as a wedge around the world. It's not just in Africa or Latin America or Asia, it's happening increasingly in Europe. Recently, the Greek ports have been taken over by Chinese state corporations on condition that they could bring their own labor force. The Polish government gave out a tender which went to a Chinese state corporation that gave them permission to redevelop their highways on condition that they got a subsidy to do so from the European Union and could bring their own workers. Now, it's not just China. Other countries are doing the same thing. One should not regard this as a Chinese phenomenon. Other countries are doing the same thing. And it has very dangerous consequences. Now, I want to end by just mentioning a couple of particular policies that get my blood pressure up. I apologize for that. I will sit down and shut up after this. But I think not only must we expose this labor export regime, But we collectively and individually must mobilize opposition to the emergence of class-based migration policy. It's become almost a parody in this country when you get situations where if you belong to the plutocracy of the world, you will be welcomed to this country, be put on a red carpet, and be fast-tracked to permanent residency. If you have 5 million, you get very fast track. If you get 1 million, you get fast. If you have 100,000, you'll be left to kick your heels in the corridor for a day or two, but then you'll be given a subsidy and a benefit so you can set up a business and do very nicely, thank you very much. If you're a member of the Precariat, meanwhile, or we treble the cost of your short-term visa, or whatever the exact number is, we make it harder, we make it more conditional. This is class-based policy. The same thing about requiring you to show you have earnings power of £18,000, 500. Why that number, I know why it was chosen, with a ridiculous number, in order to bring in an elderly relative as a dependent. This is class-based. For a member of the plutocracy or the salariat, that's okay. But if you're further down the spectrum, you can't do that. We not only have rising costs of entry for the precariat, but we find that the visas now, they're expected to pay for the UK border agency as well. Now, instead of the old pro-market principle that the cost of a visa should be approximately the cost of paying for the process, you have to pay for the UK border agency. This is amoral. And then, of course, quietly, we are introducing policies of expelling the unemployed migrants, or the people on the edge. And it was Labour government who introduced it, let's not forget. Anyone who thinks this is only this government should be waking up. It's a systematic thing of utilitarian middle-class bias that has been going on for 25 years. And we are expelling people on one-way tickets. It was very interesting that the Labour government delegated that task of searching out for unemployed migrants to send them home, or encourage them, as the language was an organisation called Crime Services. Now, what's Crime Services got to do with helping out migrants? Huh? It revealed what it was really all about. Finally, I think we need a strategy for reversing the trend to denization. We're all gradually becoming denizens, even in our own country. And we need to reverse that. The books address that point, but I have no time to do so, so thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much.